A few years ago, I made a decision that led me into an unbelievably terrifying situation. It's something I can only describe as downright idiotic, one that landed me with someone who, in my estimation, might be a serial killer or something worse. I was 18 at the time, just fresh out of high school, and this happened about 3 years ago. My life was under the thumb of an extremely overprotective and emotionally abusive father. He wouldn't let me have friends or any semblance of privacy. My only escape was a phone he got for me, just about a month before everything went down. I'd sneak onto Tinder to connect with people. A breath of fresh air in my isolated life. One guy, let's call him Alex for now, a 28-year-old, caught my attention. Looking back, it was creepy how an older man was so eager to talk to someone my age, but back then, it boosted my confidence. Alex suggested I move in with him, citing that legally, I wasn't bound by my father anymore. It excited and terrified me. We agreed to meet that night at midnight, with the condition that I'd be back home by 4 a.m. to ensure my dad didn't hear anything. I asked Alex to park away from the house and text me when he arrived. So, at midnight, he texted. I sneaked out and started walking down the driveway, but as I got closer, I heard whispers. It seemed like Alex was on the phone, talking but receiving no response. Curiosity got the best of me, and I'm grateful it did. What I overheard shook me to my core. Alex was planning something sickening, bragging about raping me and keeping me alive for as long as possible. I panicked but managed to slip away and hide in the woods, evading a potentially deadly encounter. He bombarded my phone with calls and texts. Furious that I had figured him out, his threatening messages terrified me, especially when he mentioned knowing where I lived. Terrified, I blocked him everywhere and confided in my grandmother, who rescued me from my father's abusive household. Since then, life's been about healing and moving forward, but the police couldn't act without proof, leaving me haunted by the fear that Alex might still be out there, hurting others. It's a chapter I'm glad to have left behind, working now on creating a better, safer life. I got onto Tinder out of sheer boredom and a sense of loneliness. Just last year, when things were finally settling down after the whole pandemic situation, I'd used the app before and met some decent people. Nothing extraordinary, you know. But then came this one encounter that made me swear off dating apps forever. Her name was Haley, a blonde girl who seemed alright initially. Enough for me to agree to meet her. She appeared cute, and I was craving a genuine connection. But things took a wild turn. We hit it off, planning to meet, but she was adamant about coming over to my place. I hesitated because my place was a mess, and I preferred a public setting, but she insisted. Looking back, that insistence should have raised red flags. But I was too caught up in her looks and my own loneliness to see it clearly. So, she arrived, and immediately, something seemed off. She didn't quite match her Tinder photos, but I brushed it off, not wanting to offend. We chatted, and she asked for a drink. I opted for a beer, but she'd already prepared a mixed drink for me. I wasn't keen on hard liquor, so I delayed drinking it, much to her persistence. After a few beers, I relented and took a sip. Paranoia crept in, suspecting she might have tampered with it while I was in the restroom. But as I got drunker, I dismissed my doubts. Then, things went dark. I woke up hours later, in excruciating pain, bruises all over, stab wounds on my arms and stomach, blood everywhere, my phone, TVs, jewelry, and a considerable sum of money were gone. The house was trashed, vandalized, and she was nowhere in sight. Shocked, in pain, and terrified, I realized I'd been drugged and robbed. The horror amplified when I found a pentagram drawn on the wall with my blood. I managed to call for help, but by the time the cops arrived, the trail was cold. I've since moved. Fortified my new place with security cameras and alarms, the fear still lingers. But I'm gradually reclaiming safety and sanity. If there's one lesson from this nightmare, it's to stay cautious and vigilant, no matter how lonely or alluring the situation might seem. Back in college, I entertained the thought of trying dating apps like Bumble and Tinder, just to shake off some boredom and meet new people. One day, I stumbled upon Claire, someone I recognized from high school. We hadn't spoken much back then. Despite sharing mutual friends, it was odd how little we knew each other, given our small school. Our chat took an unexpected turn. When she swiftly invited me to hang out that night, it struck me as peculiar, especially for a late-night rendezvous, but I didn't want to pass up the chance. Claire wanted me to bring weed, though I didn't indulge. So I got some, hoping it'd be satisfactory. Looking back, I should have been more cautious and let someone know where I was going. Nerves and excitement clouded my judgment, envisioning an adventurous night, but as I got closer to the address she gave, a weird feeling crept in. The neighborhood was run down, and her house looked abandoned, sending shivers down my spine. Despite my instincts screaming otherwise, I decided to give it a shot, foolishly hoping it wasn't a setup. After a brief retreat, Claire messaged, insisting I return. Reluctantly, I went back, asking her to come outside when I arrived. Ignoring the warning signs, I entered the eerie house. Finding it in disarray, music blared, adding to the unsettling atmosphere. Following the music upstairs, I called out to Claire, but as I approached, the music stopped and fear consumed me. Suddenly, a guy in gothic attire emerged, confirming it was a setup. Panicked, I fled upstairs, locked myself in the bathroom, and prepared for the worst with a toothbrush as my makeshift defense. Realizing the danger, I spotted a small window, my only escape. I squeezed through onto the roof, nearly slipping, but luck was on my side. Spotting a trampoline, I jumped, sprinted to my car, and drove off in a frenzy. I contacted the police, who later informed me of the horrifying truth. The house was a cover for a group luring victims off dating apps, posing as a pretty girl. The place harbored two bodies and evidence of sinister acts. The police caught some suspects, but are still searching for others, known as Holy Eternity. It was a chilling reminder of human depravity. That night nearly ended in tragedy, and since then, I've sworn off dating apps for good.